All right, today we're going to read Curious George Rides a Bike. And the reality is, I haven't read this book, so I don't know what's going to happen. All right, so find your favorite chair, maybe something to eat, and enjoy the story with me as you learn English. Okay? All right. This is George. He lived with his friend, the man with the yellow hat. He was a good little monkey, but he was always curious. Yep, George is always curious. Okay, this morning, George was curious the moment he woke up, right when he woke up, the moment he woke up, because he knew it was a special day. Special day. Why was it a special day? Let's see. At breakfast, George's friend, this is the man with the yellow hat, George's friend said, "Today we are going to celebrate because just 3 years ago this day, I brought you home with me from the jungle." So here's George in the jungle. The jungle, George is from the jungle in Africa, okay? And the man with the yellow hat brought George home from the jungle. So tonight, I'll take you to the animal show, to celebrate the anniversary, the 3-year anniversary of George coming home. Okay? But first, I have a surprise for you. A surprise. Oh, what's the surprise? Okay. So he has a huge box here. This is a box. A big box made out of wood is called a crate. This is a crate. It's a wooden crate. Okay? It says handle with care. Handle with care means it's fragile. Be careful. Be careful. He took George out to the yard where a big box was standing. This is the box. George was very curious. Out of the box came a bicycle. Oh, wow. Here's the bicycle. George was delighted. Delighted means really happy. Delighted, happy, excited. That's delighted. That's what he had always wanted. He knew how to ride a bicycle, but he had never had one of his own. So he'd never had his own bicycle till now. "I must go now," said the man. That is a terrible idea. He gave George a bicycle, a monkey. He gave a monkey a bicycle and then he left? That's a terrible idea. Why did he do that? Okay. "I must go now," said the man, "but I'll be back in time for the show. Be careful with your new bike and keep close to the house while I'm gone. Don't go far away." All right? George could ride very well. Oh, well, that's good. He could even do all sorts of tricks. Monkeys are good at that. Look, oh my gosh. For instance means for example. For example, he could ride this way with both hands off the handlebar. Look, no hands. Look, Ma, no hands. Wow. And he could ride this way, like a cowboy on a wild bronco. What's a bronco? A bronco is a bull, okay? A wild bull. It's a male cow. A cow that is a male. It's not a female. It's not a woman or a girl cow. It's a boy cow. It has horns. Broncos or bulls have horns, okay? And he could also ride backwards. Oh, wow. That's crazy. I can't do that. I can't do that or that. That's crazy. But after a while, George got tired of doing tricks, okay, and went out into the street. The newsboy was just passing by with his bag full of papers. I think this guy's name is Bill. I think this is Bill. Papers. What papers? The newspapers. So Bill delivers newspapers, okay? That's Bill's job. "That's a fine bike you got there," he said to George. "That's a fine bike. That means that's a nice bike. How would you like to help me deliver the papers?" Okay. He handed George the bag and told him to do one side of the street first and then turn back and do the other side. So first you go on one side of the street and you give newspapers to one side of the street, and then you go to the other side and give the newspapers to the other side of the street. You throw them, throw the newspapers. George was very proud as he rode off with his bag. This is funny because Bill, this is his job. Bill gets money. He gets paid to deliver newspapers. George is doing it for free. Okay. Wow. Bill's pretty smart, huh? Pretty smart Bill. Oh, wow. He started to deliver the papers on one side of the street as he had been told. So see that? He's throwing the papers. There's the paper, and then he's going to go to the next house and throw another paper. Then he's going to go to the next house, throw another paper, right? When he came to the last house, he saw a little river in the distance. A river. All the way up there, there's a little river. George was curious. He wanted to know what the river was like, so instead of turning back to deliver the rest of the papers, he just went on. Uh-oh. Did George go to the other side of the street? No, he didn't go to the other side of the street. He kept going straight to the river. Ooh. There was a lot to see at the river. Here's the river. A man was fishing from the bridge. This man is fishing. Okay, he's fishing from the bridge. A duck family was paddling downstream. Okay, paddling is what you do in the water. It's like this. So ducks paddle with their feet. Paddle with their feet. Okay, dogs also paddle. That's how they swim. They paddle. The ducks paddle. You can also paddle in a boat if you have an oar. Ooh, that's called paddling. Okay. Paddling downstream means down the river, down the river. And two boys were playing with their boats. Here's the boys, and they're playing with their boats. George would have liked to stop and look at the boats, but he was afraid the boy might find out that he had not delivered all the papers. So George thought, uh-oh, I can't stop because I have to deliver the papers. So he rode on. Rode on means he rode more. He continued. All right? While riding along, George kept thinking of boats all the time. It would be such fun to have a boat. So George wants a boat. But how could he get one? He thought, and then he had an idea. He got off the bicycle, took a newspaper out of the bag, and began to fold it. Fold is this, like that. Fold, okay? Don't fold books, but George is folding the newspaper. First, he folded down the corners like this. See that? Oh, nice. Look at that. This is called origami. Origami, okay? When you fold paper and make something interesting. So this has the instructions. If you want to fold a paper boat, then you can take a picture of this page. If not, we'll just keep going. So he folded, and there was his boat. He folded a boat. Now, the moment had come to launch the boat. Would it float? It did. So float is when it's on top of the water. Boats float. You can float in water, or you can float in the air. Floating in the air. So like clouds float in the air. Okay? So George decided to make some more boats. Finally, he had used up all the papers and had made so many boats that he could not count them. A whole fleet. A fleet is a lot of boats. It's a group of boats. So like most countries have a fleet of boats. The United States has a fleet. Germany has a fleet. England has a fleet of boats. Okay? Oh my gosh. Wow. Look at that. Look at how many boats. And look, the animals, the ducks are in the boats, and the bugs, the frogs, the butterflies are in the boats. Oh my goodness. Watching his fleet sailing down the river, George felt like an admiral. An admiral is like a captain in the Navy in charge of the boats. But watching his fleet, he forgot to watch where he was going. Uh-oh, look, there's a rock. Is George looking? No, he's not looking, and oof. Suddenly, there was a terrible jolt. A jolt is like this. Ooh, a jolt. Ooh. That's a jolt, a shake, or a big bump. A terrible jolt. The bicycle had hit a rock. There it is. And George flew off the seat head first. Head first. Uh-oh. Luckily, George was not hurt. That's good. He was not hurt. But the front wheel of the bicycle was all out of shape, and the tire was blown out. So this is the wheel, and this is the tire. The tire. And the tire, look. The tire popped. Okay? Uh-oh. George tried to ride the bicycle, but of course it wouldn't go. Oh no. That's so sad. So he started carrying it, but it soon got too heavy. George did not know what to do. Oh, it's too heavy. Oh. His new bike was spoiled. Spoiled means it's ruined. Ruined. It doesn't work anymore. The newspapers were gone. He wished he had listened to his friend and kept close to the house. Yeah, because the man with the yellow hat said, "Don't go far away." And George went really far. Now, he just stood there and cried. Oh. Uh-oh, look at that. Suddenly, his face brightened. Brightened. When your face brightens, it means you get happier. You smile. It's like, oh, okay, you're happier. Why, he had forgotten that he could ride on one wheel. He tried it, and it worked. This is called a wheelie. To pop a wheelie, to do a wheelie, is to ride on only one wheel. He had hardly started out again, so right after he started going, when he saw, oh my gosh, something he had never seen before. Rolling toward him came an enormous tractor with huge trailers behind it. This is an enormous tractor, a huge tractor. Looking out of the trailers, here's a trailer, were all sorts of animals. To George, it looked like a zoo on wheels. Nice. A zoo on wheels. The tractor stopped, and two men jumped out. "Well, well," said one of the men, "a little monkey who can ride a bike bronco fashion." Remember a bronco? Remember what that is? It's a bull. "We can use you in our animal show tonight. I am the director of the show, and this is Bob." Uh-oh. These guys want George to be in their show. Uh-oh. "He can straighten your wheel and fix that flat in no time." So flat, the tire is flat. Psst. So this guy, Bob, is going to fix the tire. Fix. "And then we'll take you along to the place where the show is going to be." So they're taking George. Uh-oh. So the three of them got into the cab. This is the cab or the truck, right? The truck. The truck has trailers. Trailer, trailer, trailer. And drove off. "Maybe you could play a fanfare while you ride your bike in the show." What's a fanfare? A fanfare is a song usually on a trumpet. or a tuba or a trombone. A fanfare. Dun, 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 dun. It's a fanfare. The director said, I have a bugle for you right here. A bugle, this is a bugle. A bugle is like a trumpet, okay? Trumpet. It's an instrument. And later on, you'll get a coat and cap just like Bob's. A coat and cap. So here is Bob's coat and Bob's cap, or his hat. All right? On the showgrounds is the place where the show was going to happen. All right? Everybody was busy getting things ready for the show. I must do some work now, said the director. Meanwhile, you may have a look around and get acquainted with all the animals. Acquainted? What does get acquainted with means? That means to meet, or to meet the animals, to get acquainted with, or to get used to get familiar with, to get acquainted with. Okay? To meet all the animals. But you must not feed them, especially the ostrich, because he will eat anything and might get very sick afterwards. The ostrich. Where's the ostrich? Here it is. This is an ostrich. So he says, don't feed the animals. Don't feed the ostrich. Okay. If you know anything about George, it's that he loves to feed animals. He loves to give food to animals. So I don't think that George is going to follow this advice. I think George is going to feed the animals. But let's see. George was curious. Would the ostrich really eat anything? Would it eat anything? He wouldn't eat a bugle, or would he? Would the ostrich eat a bugle? George went a little closer to the cage. Here's the cage. Cages are where you keep animals. And before he knew it, the ostrich had snatched the bugle. Snatched is like this. Snatched or grabbed. Snatched. And tried to swallow it. He tried to swallow the bugle. But a bugle is hard to swallow. Yeah, I imagine it is, yeah. Even for an ostrich, it got stuck in his throat. Stuck in his throat. Oh no. Funny sounds came out of the bugle as the ostrich was struggling with it. Funny sounds, huh? Struggling, I can't, Okay, all blue in the face. The ostrich is blue in the face. Right here it looks red, but that's okay. George was frightened. He was scared. Oh no, George was frightened. Fortunately, luckily, the men had heard the noise. They came rushing to the cage and rushing fast to the cage and got the bugle out of the ostrich's throat just in time. So they took the bugle out of the ostrich's throat. I mean, wow, that's crazy. The director was very angry with George. We cannot use little monkeys who don't do as they are told, he said. Of course, you cannot take part in the show now. We will have to send you home. That's funny because usually monkeys can't understand. When you talk to a monkey, they don't know what you're saying. But for some reason, this guy thought that George would listen. Okay? George had to sit on a bench all by himself, and nobody even looked at him. He was terribly sorry for what he had done. That means he was very sorry. But now it was too late. He had spoiled everything. Remember the word spoiled? It means ruined everything. It doesn't work now because George spoiled it. He ruined it. Meanwhile, at the same time, the ostrich, always hungry, had got hold of a string dangling near his cage. Dangling means like this. Dangling. Dangling. This is a string. The ostrich grabbed the string. This happened to be the string which held the door to the cage of the baby bear. Look, So the ostrich pulls the string and the door goes up, and the baby bear is gonna get out. As the ostrich nibbled at it, what's nibbled? Nibbled is when you take tiny bites. Nibble, nibble, nibble. It's not a big bite. It's a tiny bite. Nibble, okay? As the ostrich nibbled at it, the door opened and the baby bear got out. Uh-oh. He ran away as fast as he could and made straight for a high tree near the camp. He made for a tree. That's a way of saying he ran towards a tree. He made straight for a high tree means he ran straight towards a tall tree. Nobody had seen it but George. George was the only one who saw. And George was not supposed to leave his bench. But this was an emergency. So he jumped up, grabbed the bugle, and blew as loud as he could. Okay? Then he rushed to his bicycle. He ran to his bicycle really fast. The men had heard the alarm and thought at first that George had been naughty again. Naughty is not good. It's when you do bad things. It's when you don't listen to the instructions. Okay? Naughty, mischievous, naughty. They thought that George was naughty. But when they saw the empty cage and the ostrich nibbling at the string, they knew what had happened. George raced toward the tree. Zoom. Raced. Raced is another way of saying he went really fast, okay? Far ahead of the men. By now, the bear had climbed quite high, and this was dangerous because little bears can climb up a tree easily, but coming down is much harder. So here's the bear, all the way up at the top of the tree. Bears can climb up, but they can't climb down. It's harder. They may fall and get hurt. The men were worried. They did not know how to get him down safely. But George had his plan. Oh my goodness, look at the bear hanging from a branch. That's crazy. And he looks terrified. He's so scared. George is there. With the bag over his shoulder, he went up the tree as fast as only a monkey can. Because he's a monkey, he can climb really fast. And when he reached the baby bear, he put him in his bag and carefully let him down so that the men could safely catch him. He let the bear down so the men could catch him. Okay? Everybody cheered, woohoo, when George had come down from the tree. "You are a brave little monkey," said the director. "You saved the baby bear's life. Now you'll get your coat back, and of course, you may ride your bike and play the bugle in the show." So now the director is happy, and he says, "George, you can be in the show again." All right, awesome. Look at that. Finally, the show was on. The whole town had come to see it. And how surprised they were to discover George on his bike right in the middle of it. The newsboy was there too, and also the man with the yellow hat. Wait, what? Wasn't the man with the yellow hat gonna come with George? Was he not worried about where George was? I mean, okay, that's fine, I guess. So there he goes, George and the whole show. Oh, okay. The man with the yellow hat who had been looking for George everywhere and was happy to have found him at last. At last, finally, he found him. The newsboy was glad to have his bag again, and the people from the other side of the street whose papers George had made into boats were not angry with him anymore. Okay, so all the newspapers, on all these newspapers, these people, they weren't angry anymore because I guess they liked George. George! Nice. This is cursive. This is fancy letters. It's a fancy way of writing. It's called cursive. When the time had come for George to say goodbye, the director let him keep the coat and the cap and the bugle. Wow, he could keep the coat, cap, and the bugle. Nice. And then George and his friend got into the car and went home. They went home.